Here is a question. This is from Osborn. So Osborn has another channel called Lisa Cairns Clips channel. And this is nothing to do with me. Obviously, it's of me, but it's nothing to do with me, as in I'm not paying Osborn or asking him to do it. He's doing it out of his own passion, which is super beautiful. Yeah, it's really lovely. And he has some questions from it. Dak asks, if I am perfect, then why do I need massive amounts of medication to not hurt myself or others? Yeah, thanks, Dak, for your question. And I'm sorry to hear about the pain that's appearing in your life with having to medicate to not hurt yourself or to hurt others. So there's two perfects that I'm going to talk about. There is the perfect in time, so the perfection of what's apparently happening through time, and this perfection of what you are now. So in this moment, there is what we could call consciousness looking through Dak's body-mind mechanism. So this consciousness, which isn't separate from anything and also isn't a thing, is looking through a Dak that wants to hurt himself or is medicated and experiencing life through that. And that consciousness is perfection and is absolutely free and never suffered a moment in its life. It's timeless and spaceless and just present. So the consciousness isn't an action, isn't a behavior, isn't a time-bound thing. It is a presence that's here experiencing. And that's absolute freedom. That's what's spoken about in non-duality. So non-duality is the recognition of what you are beyond the body-mind mechanism, beyond thoughts and images. So in that sense, who you truly are is absolutely perfect, and who you truly are has never hurt someone or hurt themselves. It's experiencing. And then you've got the time-bound you, which is also perfect. So if we stop talking about you, Dak, and we start speaking about, say, Charlie Manson, I'm not comparing you in any way to Charlie Manson, but just because you said hurt people and hurt others, I just want to take it to an extreme person for people's imagination. So if we took somebody like Charlie Manson, who destroyed a lot of lives, like if you've ever read or listened to Charlie Manson, like one thing that he will say again and again, which to me I find true. It doesn't excuse anything, but and I'm not trying to, I'm looking this from any psychological assessment or apologies or anything like that. I'm looking at it from what he says is he would say, I did what I did because of the way the system and society created me. And what he means by that is he had a really awful childhood, like really awful. If you ever find out about or study Charlie Manson, you'll realize that his childhood was awful. He had no parenting, he had no safety, he had no social structure, he had no routine, he had no one to comfort him. He really had to survive by himself. And it's the same with if I got a new puppy and I put the puppy in a bag and I repetitively kicked at the dog And then every time I opened the bag, I showed it a man, not a woman, just a man. And I did this all the time, like every day for months on end. The dog would fear and hate the man. And every time it saw any man, it would fear and hate it. And it would have very difficult behavior around men, like fear, anxiety, aggression, all types of difficult behavior. What we do as humans is we're always personifying everything. So we say the dog is good or bad in the moment. So if a dog shows aggression, we say it's bad without looking at the history of what's seemingly happened. And we say, this is a bad dog. Well, there's not actually a dog there. There isn't a dog which is bad. There is behaviors that have happened in the past. There is it's genetic predisposition. So its genetic predisposition will have an effect. And then it's got the habits and the conditions from this life. So if it was beaten a lot and it's aggressive, then yeah, of course it's going to be aggressive. But we as humans think there is a soul inside that dog, or there is a soul inside of Charlie Manson, and he is a bad, evil soul. So another thing you might say is, I had an abusive childhood and I didn't turn out like him. Or I came from poverty and I didn't turn out like him. But it's like not taking in consideration the genetic predisposition and then also the details of what happened to him in his life. So, because you might take another body-mind mechanism and it might not turn out to be a Charlie Manson if you put it in that position. But certainly it's going to end up being destructive in some way, unless it goes for intense therapy. They go for intense therapy. And basically what this is pointing to is no choice, which is a very controversial idea, because we are so convinced that Charlie Manson had a choice and that he's a bad person. I mean, he destroyed so many lives. If you, like all the people in his cult that he convinced to do all this stuff, and then all the families of the people that he killed. Like, such a destructive life. Like, so many people were affected by his actions. But there isn't somebody inside his body that's evil. There's habits and conditionings that have transpired. So there's nobody that's actually guilty. So when Charlie Manson says it, it's actually a very astute thing. But it's also something that somebody with narcissistic or sociopathic personality would say as well. Because somebody with narcissistic or sociopathic personality wouldn't want to take any form of responsibility. And that's a whole different matter, because at the same time, it's important to take responsibility. So if I run over somebody's cat or do something not nice, it's important to take responsibility. Like, my body did this and I apologize and I'm really sorry about that, and to look into what behaviors created that and how I could change that. Not just, it's not my fault, there is no choice, there is no doer. It's like, that's a defense. And taking responsibility changes the body-mind mechanism. It changes it, but it's not really somebody's choice and responsibility. There's not anybody there with responsibility. But in taking responsibility, it ironically reconditions the habits and conditions and changes the person, and changes the body-mind mechanism. But there is nobody here that could take responsibility. There is no evil soul. So what I'm trying to say to you is, the reason that you take a large amount of medication to not hurt yourself or hurt others is most probably because of the way in which you were conditioned in childhood and your genetic predisposition. Which genetic predisposition you could say is like past life stuff, but you could call it genetic predisposition as well. So, yeah. And I'm so sorry that that's manifest in this life. And there is the possibility to change that. It's not somebody's choice to change that, but there is the possibility to change that through therapy. The medication, I'm sure, is changing it, but also through therapy and through help from others. And I hope that you can get that help. And also, listening to this subject might also relax stuff and change stuff, and having an awakening might also change stuff. Yeah, I wish you all the best, Dak. Okay. TT asks, hey, when you do those pauses, are you receiving information? I don't know. When I do the pauses, I don't know it's not like I'm sitting there every time I do a pause and putting an antenna out to get new information. But sometimes I am waiting for words to come, but I don't see it like receiving information. It's just waiting for that inspiration. The way I like to speak about it is similar to the way that Roger, my teacher, spoke about it, is that I'm trying to be authentic in the moment, like trying to do what I feel. In every given moment, Roger would say, and Ramesh would say, do exactly what you feel like doing, knowing there's nobody doing anything. So I'm trying to wait for the appropriate impulses from the body, rather than to do something because my mind is telling me, or because of thought or the intellect. And maybe you can play with this. I don't know if you've ever tried it before, to sit there and wait for an impulse to come that's not intellectual. SA asks, how do you deal with falling back into identification? How do I deal with falling back into identification? I don't look at it like that I fall back into identification. I do recognize that old seeking patterns arise. Predominantly, I would say the biggest area in which seeking patterns arise is socialization, is me attempting to socialize with people that aren't into this situation, this subject, that don't have presence, that are very mind identified. Yeah. And when that happens, so I don't see it as falling back into identification, but I see it as old seeking patterns arising. When that happens, I always try to, there might be all types of emotions that are arising, but my underlying attitude, or the underlying attitude that often arises here, is interest. How can this help me grow and expand? There might be moments of like, God, get me out of here. But generally it's like, how can I use this to help me expand on the human level, or to let go of these seeking patterns? Yeah. VES asks, you had your awakening while eating sweets in Bali, I think. Now you know the truth. How can I, others not awakened people, trigger the same experience or any experience so I get the understanding of reality? Hey Ves, VES, Ves. We can talk about the personality structure and settling down the personality structure, but settling down the personality structure isn't a guaranteed for awakening. But that's the only thing that you can do in time-bound reality, is settling down what's happening in the personal realms. The you cannot come to timelessness because the you only exists in time. So you cannot achieve timelessness. You cannot achieve awakening because awakening is right here. So right now, who is experiencing? Who is looking out of the eyes? Who is listening? Who is speaking? Right now. You know, settling down, the person is wise, is a wisdom, but the person cannot get to this. Thank you, Vess.